Hey everybody, this is Tony.
And this is Paul, and we're coming at you from the Friends for Life podcast, where we discuss the ongoing lives and issues of people with developmental disabilities to spark positive change in the field.
And we have a lot of fun doing it.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Friends for Life podcast. Thanks for tuning back in. We got Jimmy and David here from THS Remote Support Services. This will be the second podcast, actually. We had Jimmy on one of our very first episodes, so welcome to our studio. Hope you had a nice drive down.
Thanks. The drive wasn't too bad. Yeah.
Nice. Wonderful. So how are you guys doing today?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Good. What's on your minds? How are you feeling? It's a stressful year for everyone, for the DD field specifically. So anything got amped up at the moment that we need to talk about, get off your chest before we dive into all this wonderful remote support stuff that Tony's always raving about?
I don't have anything to get off my chest. For a lot of people in the DD field, it's a rough time. For us, it's a great time because we can help those people in the rough time. So it's unique from our perspective.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Fair enough. So we kind of got a backstory of how Jimmy got into this field, but David, how'd you get into this?
Jimmy.
Yeah. He forced you in.
Well, I've known Jimmy since he was a kid. So it was like, we used to work together, when he was 16, at Best Buy back in the day when we were kids.
Nice.
So I grew up with him.
Nice.
And then he got into this field like years ago, into the HPC side of things. And he did his thing, I did my thing, and then I just wanted a new opportunity one day. Yeah. And he was like, "Oh, what about working with me again?" And I'm like, "What do you do?"
Terrible decision. I regret it all. I'm just kidding.
But it was an opportunity where he presented to me like, "This is what we're doing. It's starting to grow. We can help people." And the system that they had in place for the remote support side of things, because I didn't know what it was. I mean, we did Best Buy. We knew technology stuff, but the remote support was very unique. And once I asked him questions about it, like, okay, so how does this work? How does the system work? What do you guys do? What makes you different than anybody else? Because I need to know my competition as well. Mm-hmm. And it was such a sound system that it was a no-brainer. I get to work with one of my best friends, and we have a solid product. So it was up to us to just introduce ourselves as individuals like you guys. Say, hey, this is what we can do, and we can help you on a very high level. So it was kind of fun. Now I get to see him all the time.
That's awesome.
He hates it, but
Hey, Paul, they sound like our relationship.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds just like me and Tony.
I get more calls from him than anybody.
That's gonna get bored. I'm like, hey, what are you doing?
You want to work? No. Hey, so as we said before you, Jimmy, you already were on earlier before, and that was before I actually even dove too deep into what you guys could do for Friends for Life. And I went ahead and I ripped a Band-Aid. I said, hey, let's start this relationship. And for me, not only has it been profitable, it's been guiding the light of what I feel our field of work should be. And that's advocating for folks to be independent. It helps create those independent structures. And although in the past couple of years, we were forced to kind of get on quicker with it, what have you noticed about it, about the remote support area that has been more beneficial to a lot of providers?
Well, geez, our whole reason for getting into this was because we were an HPC provider. Mm-hmm. So that's where we started. And we said, how can we help ourselves? And we started this before COVID, before pandemic. And providers still needed help before that happened. And we said, okay, we need a way to extend the staff and use them where they really need to be used. And that's where that conversation started. And then we learned, like you're saying, Tony, this really is a way to increase independence. This really is a way to make people happier. The people that we serve, this population who need these services, are are happier, more independent. But we found the HPC staff happier too, because your shift, you're working a second shift, and someone's scheduled to come relieve you at 10, 11 p.m. at night. They don't show, you're upset because you're stuck. you can't leave that person there unattended. They need to be supervised. They need assistance of some type. So that's where it helps those individuals working those shifts in the field, in the homes, because they know they can leave and they can commit when they need to pick up their children, depending on when their shift ends. They can be at certain places. They can get home. They can sleep in their own bed. Those sorts of things matter, and that helps turnover. And just if they're happier, they're more rested, they're going to do a better job too. So it helps all sorts of ways. So that's the helping the individual. That's the helping the staff. It's also cheaper for Medicaid dollars. So because it's cheaper, the state and the county boards can save money, and that means they can use that money they saved to give out more waivers and help more people who need it. So there's every avenue, there's a benefit. So we just figured, and that was part of my pitch, I guess, that Dave was saying when I talked to him. I was like, this is like a 3 birds with 1 stone type of a thing. It really helps in multiple ways.
And for your staff, I mean, we work with you guys. There's been many times your staff's like, hey, can you cover a shift? Because of whatever reason. And we can just turn on and go because we already know what to do in that situation. So if a doctor's appointment comes up, or the snowstorm that happened, we covered shifts because staff, we don't want to force staff to get there because they have to be there through a snowstorm.
The ice storm was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And Thursday of the ice storm, we covered 97 shifts that HPC staff didn't have to work because either they just pre-scheduled with us to cover it or they weren't able to make it in. That was just Thursday. And then on Friday, we did another 80. So it was 170 roughly. Like, I don't know if it was 80 exactly, but those are just times where if a staff didn't show up because they couldn't make it in, somebody would have had to have been there.
Right.
Well, we can just help on demand. And again, it's providing supervision. No one's risking their life. The staff's happy, or they're not forced to go in. They're not stuck on the side of the road somewhere. It's just huge, and it's flexible. Even if it's just, hey, it looks like I'm going to be an hour late, we'll just do the 1 hour. We don't need a whole shift.
Right.
We can work with you, whatever you need, whatever the individual needs, and get it covered. It's in real time. Like, hey, turn it on now. Okay, it's on.
Yeah. And it's realistic. It's not like you have all this big clunky machinery everywhere. You guys have a pretty good setup. So could you, a lot of my individuals, we utilize remote supports, especially for sleep time. We hardly really have any sleep staff anymore, but so overnights we utilize for medication administration. We also use for maybe AWOL situations if someone's not going to remain in their current home or area. Is there a specific service that you guys see more of than not utilized recently, especially in the last couple of years?
I think our most common thing relates to almost the AWOL.
Okay.
It's really about the coming and going of the house. Most people are worried if somebody enters the house that their loved one's going to be safe. Is it a friend? Is it a direct care employee? Or is it somebody who shouldn't be there? And then on the other end, is my person that I love going to leave and get lost or trip and fall outside? Those sorts of things. So I feel like that's the number one thing we get asked to help with, is if someone has left or someone came in.
Gotcha.
And then we get a lot of medications. I feel like recently there have been less and less staff available, and turnover. Well, you've got to train the staff, you get a medication certified, those sorts of things. Well, how can we help agencies with that? And we've had a lot of medication setups get requested.
Yeah, and you got that. It's hard to find staff nowadays anyway.
Yeah.
So trying to get someone to come in for an hour to pass meds.
Yeah.
You know, that person's supposed to take them at 8. They have maybe an hour window to take it, and that nurse gets stuck in traffic or something. They can't get there till 11. Well, that's an issue. So, and you're trying to find that person to cover that 1 hour that has to come from over there, or you don't have staff available to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people don't even know that we can do med passes.
Yeah.
Which, you know, when we tell people about it, they're like, what? I don't think that's safe to do. Well, it is. And we can do that. Even if they're not self-med, as long as a nurse fills that device, remote supports can pass those meds and watch them do it visually, so we can get that visual certificate or visual piece of that and say, yes, they took it. And if they don't take it or we don't get a hold of them, then we can reach out to you guys, let them know, hey, they did not take the meds, we didn't get a hold of them. So everybody's in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
But it saves people trying to get staff to cover an hour when they just can't find staff to cover shifts at this point.
Right.
And I think that is a very, very big deal. Because I'm going in Friends for Life world kind of on that. We're trying to take that responsibility off of us, just for the financial burden of the company that has been gathered throughout the past years. I mean, you get people who are medically MedPass certified. If that's not really what they do and they mess up, your insurance rates go up. And then once your insurance rates go up, it takes years to even get those to be able to mellow out again. And this is not something that everybody thinks of when you're starting a business, let alone in the healthcare field, and you're passing medications. So to pass on that burden to you guys was a heck of a hell yeah to me.
Yeah, that sounds...
Glad we can help, guys.
Thank you.
So let's go back a little bit. So you guys are friends growing up. Obviously, with remote supports, you're dealing with a lot of technology. So you guys like technology nerds? Is that kind of the vibe? Because I mean, look at me. Like I have this whole room wired up. I'm in love with technology.
This is a very impressive setup, by the way.
Thank you. It's all Tony. But so are you guys big tech nerds? Is that how you got into this?
Yes.
I think so. Like just admitting, I'm a nerd, I'm a geek, whatever. But at least I've always been into, cool gadgets, and you see like AI movies and, like that's awesome. And this just happens to be like real life now.
Mm-hmm.
We can use technology to help people.
Yep.
So it was like, hey, let's actually do something that we already had an interest in and use it.
Maybe that just, working at Best Buy and seeing all the fun stuff, all the toys.
Yeah.
We just it was fun.
Yeah.
Get some video games, get a big screen TV, so this is just, an extension of that. Now we know all that stuff. So it's fun for us to find new technology pieces that can even help individuals. So yeah, it's kind of fun to get into it like that.
Funny, growing up, I used to be a huge Radio Shack guy. Oh man, every time I went to Radio Shack, I was like, and I always wanted to buy like a CB radio. Like it just spoke to me. Never got one though.
Half the people listening to this right now is gonna be like, Radio Shack. What is
that?
For real?
Did you just make that up?
It's a real place.
Was there a shack where you go and listen to the radio?
My memories of Radio Shack, because when I started doing audio stuff, like recording music and stuff as a kid, like in my teenage years. I spent hours in Radio Shack trying to like find converters to different wires to like hook microphones to computers.
They had all of the converters.
Every converter you could ever imagine. It was an amazing place. But is that, with when THS got started, how much of it was like you guys in the field just trying to like figure this out? Or was there already like a system in place to wire up a house with all this technology and stuff?
Feel free to answer that one, Jimmy, because there was a lot of what worked, what didn't work type of situation.
So it was a work in progress. In the beginning, since we were an HPC company, we said, hey, let's find the people that we already serve that could be candidates. And we talked to those teams and we said, hey, this is what we think could work, could be helpful. And it worked. We just didn't like how hard it was to make it work. So like, okay, now I'm going to try this piece of technology. I'm going to try that. And we went through lots of iterations of stuff and systems and softwares. And ultimately, we realized like, hey, the software is a thing that's crucial because that's what our staff use to know what to do, how to do, et cetera, et cetera. So we have gotten our own developers and created that platform like it from the ground up. And it is made for this. It's not made for the aging population or anything else that was just, modified. Like, no, it's made for this. And because we were an HPC company, we knew what was needed on like both sides. So that helped. The equipment piece, we needed that software to build around flexibility because we learned, well, different ecosystems have their own benefits. And if I want to use one piece of something from that ecosystem, but I want to use this piece from this ecosystem, I want to be able to use them both. So that was key to making sure that it would work with everything. I mean, even now, there's just new stuff always coming out. We're always testing, like we're testing new fall detection things. We're testing a new medication device with a nationwide company. And it's feeling out like, okay, how can I make this break? Or how can I make it not work? Because you want to find what may happen and then have a solution for it. So we want to test it and test it and test it until we've got all those answers. And then we can deploy it. But it took a long time. And we started off real small with just our people, like I said. And for many years, people asked, hey, do you do remote supports at this part of the state in Ohio? And we said no in the beginning. We only stuck to our little corner down in Southwest Ohio and Cincinnati, Dayton areas where our direct care staff offices were. And once we had that foundation, once we had our own software and all that, that's when we said, yeah, let's start partnering with people. And it opened up. And we didn't do any marketing or anything that said, hey, come learn about me. People just heard about us and they started reaching out and we started helping them. And then eventually we learned like, okay, people really want this. Let's actually start marketing.
Yeah, that's awesome because I always like people who just kind of will build things from scratch just to do it. Like that's how it is with the podcast. Like we started this, we had no idea what we were doing. And now we still really don't know what we're doing, but we're trying. It looks a lot better anyway.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, that's just so cool because it's like, I like it when people take an idea and just make it. Like they don't have excuses. Like I'm sure you could have been like, oh, well, that's pretty complicated. I'm not going to do that. Well, somebody else will come up with that eventually, but you took that initiative and here you are. You're probably doing pretty well with the way things are going right now and the explosion of, we don't like to say the C word on here anymore because that whole time in history is just gross. But during the pandemic, have you guys seen like a huge rise in your services being needed everywhere? It's a good time for you, I'm assuming?
Yeah, because I heard you guys were like #1 in the state of growth or something like.
Well, so, I guess it gave more awareness to remote supports, more openness because, we all went to Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
So everybody that's on Zoom meetings like understood how remote supports could possibly work. We're talking to people remotely through a talk device. So because everybody was forced to kind of do these Zoom meetings, it sped up just the knowledge of, okay, remote supports could be something that looks like what I'm doing now. So the awareness part of it definitely kind of took off. The openness to try it, some people, like you mentioned earlier, Tony, it was forced upon you because someone had got COVID. Or someone, staff didn't want to come into the home. So they were like, we need help. So we even started doing, quick turnaround setups. So we had stuff ready to go, install it in a day or two so we could provide services for 2 to 3 weeks during that quarantine period. And that's what makes remote supports kind of fun is, we can work a year, 2 years, 2 weeks, if you actually needed to. We don't prefer that. But, we're able to help out in those little pinches. So when that pandemic, the C word started, it just kind of opened up more eyes on it to say, okay, can I use this in this situation? So that's the biggest thing that kind of opened. Now that it's been a 2-year process, more people are starting to kind of open up to it to say, hey, can you help us? Because there's other benefits other than just having technology in there. You know, once remote supports is in the home, you have backup staff all the time. So if Tony's individuals can't come into the home for some reason, they can call us and say, hey, can you cover this shift for a couple hours? Absolutely. So once people start using it and having it in the home, then, you know, you kind of see how it benefits you.
So there's obviously some misgivings with some organizations, some companies, obviously. So what kind of myths would you dispel if you had to tell people like this is totally safe? I mean, Tony could do that too because he works with you guys, and I mean he talks about it on the podcast with like every company that comes in here. He's like, "Have you tried remote supports? Have you tried remote supports?" Like it's literally every episode probably you can watch. So is there any myths you'd like to dispel about what people think that it is versus isn't?
The number one thing we always hear is they think, well, there's two different, I guess, perspectives. From the individuals being served, they think it's a big brother. You're always going to watch me. I'm not going to have any privacy. And it couldn't be further from the truth. It's actually more privacy than if that staff was in your home.
Okay.
Because we're not watching, we're not hearing, we're not doing anything unless we are triggered to do some type of event. And you could be, in your room, you could be watching TV, you could be cooking, you could be taking a shower. And we're not going to know that unless you and your team has asked for a certain piece of equipment that's going to trigger an event. Like, hey, did you fall in the bathroom? Or did your front door open? Those triggers are when it tells us, hey, maybe Jimmy needs looked into. Is he okay? That's when we're going to see and hear things. But if you had a staff member in your home, they'd be hearing you sing in the shower the whole time. Like we're not going to hear that. So that's the myth on their side. On the staffing side, the provider side, until people start working with us, they almost think of us as competition. There's HPC companies out there who think, oh, THS remote supports, they're here to take this business and serve this individual and push me out. And that, again, couldn't be further from the truth. We work for those HPC companies. They're going to provide that paid backup in case that person needs to go in. That company chooses which vendor to work with. So I want to make sure you're happy, because you could just be like, hey, bye. See ya. And we will mutually serve that same individual to make sure they're supported and safe.
Yeah, remote supports is not Big Brother.
Yeah.
Even when staff is in the home, they think sometimes, oh my God, there's a camera there.
Yeah.
They're watching me cook breakfast. No, I don't care what you're doing. We're not even on. Like we work a shift that you ask us to work. So if you have staff in the home, we're off. We're not paying attention. We're off. We're just like, think of us as at home sleeping in our bed.
Yeah.
We're not paying attention to that kind of thing. So we're not Big Brother. We work with you, not against you. We are your partner. So that's the big thing that people think. So getting buy-in from everyone involved is a good thing. Because sometimes I'll tell you, Tony, what we're going to do, but the staff in the home's like, oh no, there's a camera.
Yeah.
And we've had people put like a towel over the camera because they think we're paying attention to it during the day, which we're not. And then when we turn on at night, like when staff leaves, we're like, why is there a towel on this camera?
And sometimes we get questions like, why didn't you tell me when they put it on? It's like, that's because what we said is true. We're not watching. We're not watching until you tell us to turn our schedule on. And, they did that sometime during the daytime, and we don't come on until 11 o'clock at night. Yeah, that's when I noticed.
That's when we noticed. Nice.
It's like, what's that saying? I think it's like, nobody has time to worry. It's like essentially nobody has time to worry about what you're doing. Like I'm worrying about what I'm doing.
Yep.
Like how are you going to monitor 5,000 people at once? Like there's no way that there is enough time for that. So that's good to know for a lot of people, because that's why partly wanted you guys to come back on is to dispel those myths, especially in this staffing crisis where nobody can get anybody to work and like come in. It's a lifesaver. So, in that aspect, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but how is it helping businesses overall, like Tony's business, where it's like, we can't find people right now? Like, are you guys just stepping in and filling a lot more space, like with your employees, or how's it working?
We have our regular schedules. So people we work with even friends for life, we've got, hey, this is what we would like you to work routinely.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got a lot of companies who call up and say, hey, we lost this staff member. It's going to take me 2-3 weeks to hire someone, train someone. So I need you to cover these shifts here and these shifts here until we get that person ready. And it's basically a stopgap, and we can do that. We can cover those gaps and bookend whatever you need us to. It's very hard to find staff everywhere. It's crazy. Obviously, wages at we were eating earlier, and there was a sign on the door, and it said the average wage of our employees in here is like $17.80 an hour or something. It said,
Wow.
For a fast food restaurant. So good
Well,
luck.
see you guys later.
It's crazy. So obviously, HPC companies can only pay what they can afford, and they only get to bill and invoice rates that's determined by the state. So it's not like you can choose your rate. You can't up the price of your service like a restaurant could increase how much a burger costs. Like, you don't get that option. So you're stuck within the certain parameters, and you've got to somehow make it work, and it's hard. And right now, remote supports can help that. I think it's a little over 1.3 million hours of service we're providing every year right now.
Nice.
So that's how many hours a staff member is not in the home.
That's a mind-blowing number.
That they can be somewhere else where they actually are needed, kind of a thing. So I don't know how many full-time jobs that is, but that's a lot of people who we don't have enough to hire and work that many hours. So,
well, that just brings up a whole other point of how much time is needed for people with disabilities to like have people take care of them, help them with stuff. I mean, that what did you say, 1.5 million hours?
I think we're over 1.3. It may be getting close to 1.4. I'm not sure exactly, but it's a lot.
That's a lot of time.
Truly.
Those are working hours that people would be in houses that you're helping cover. I mean, that's just what you're covering too. I can't like how many millions of hours are being spent in this profession every year. That never has crossed my mind before.
Well, even if you're paying, like you guys said, it's hard to find people now for staffing. The fast food restaurant's paying $17.80 a person to cook a burger for lunch. So you guys have to compete with that. So trying to find someone to come in and take care of an individual, I mean, you're going to have to offer them more. So financially, it gets harder and harder because even the ones that you want to keep, you're maybe paying them more to stay, or you're trying to pay them overtime to cover shifts.
Or Tony, you said a way to take the medicines off their plate.
Yeah.
Things like that. So things that they may be worried about, like, well, I don't want to be responsible for giving someone the medicine and I accidentally mess up. If you take that off their plate and we can help somehow, great. That's an objection that you overcame to help that staff member be more comfortable, and you don't have to worry about turnover and those sorts of things. So even if it's not replacing a staff member, it's like helping a staff member.
Yeah. It's padding the negative punch that could happen.
Right.
And when you put remote supports in, like it did for you guys, you get paid when we work.
Yes. That's like that right there is what I tell people all the time. Like, you can get profits from doing this. Like, and it puts your individual in a safer place.
And that's what we try to, that's the biggest thing with remote supports is it growing is because providers don't understand that. They, that misconception of we're coming in and we're going to steal this. No, we're working with you and you get paid for every hour we work. So take that person that's sleeping at night, let us work. You get paid on the back end to be there for that person, and then take that staff member and pick up another client or move them to a home that needs it.
How many nights a week or a month or a year have we had to call you and say, hey, a staff member needs to go out?
Oh, I I hardly ever get calls like that.
Exactly. But so all those nights you don't get a call, that's
Those
money
are-
you got where you
Mhm.
didn't have to send anybody.
Yeah.
And a lot of companies don't realize that. They think it's going to be a constant thing. Like, oh, they're going to call me all the time. I'm going to have to send
Oh,
somebody. It's
no.
going to be a headache. And
It's wild that you say that because the people that we get the most calls for, we are aware of their situation. We're knowing that we're going to get the calls from them just due to their developmental difference. But aside from that, like it's easy clockwork. And like you even said, taking the staff people and moving them around, we've actually taken the profits and regenerated it to the staff people that work in the houses. So they get an extra bump to actually work a little less, but they get to see that it's beneficial to them on both ends.
So I'm assuming
That's
that's got to
great.
make them happy, right? Like,
Yeah,
work less hours and get a little bit of a pay raise too?
For the majority, yes.
Okay.
There's just some people you're not going to make happy at all. But
Understandable.
for the most part, yeah, I think everybody has. I mean, we have plenty of sites where you guys maybe perform 70 to 100 hours of service, and then the rest are staffed hours. My staff are like, hey, this is perfect. This is the kind of scenario I need in order to work and live my life. So,
But then as individuals get more, independence.
mhm.
It's the whole point
Yes.
of staff is have more independence. So I don't understand why people want to fight against you because there's so many benefits. We just talked about all of them. You get
Mhm.
paid for us to work. The individual gets more independence, and you're not stuck with anything.
Right.
Remote supports is if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We just come get equipment and go back to the staffing model. But
I mean,
the whole
that saying
point
it's
of it
too
is,
good to be true. That saying does not work here.
no,
This-
I feel like I told you
this
that same
is-
thing,
Yeah.
Tony. Like, this is what's going to happen. And you're like, I don't know. And then like a year later, you have several homes with remote supports and it's
Mhm.
helping, all over the place. Not only profitability wise for you, but the individuals have more independence. They're able to do things. You can move staff around. They're happier.
Even have
So-
some individuals who come out, hey, I need, they're telling us what they would want next from remote supports.
And that's a win.
That's
That's,
awesome.
a win right
That's
there.
perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I hear Tony behind the scenes a lot. So, I've never heard him speak of anything but remote supports. Like there's a lot of things he doesn't like, obviously, owning a business, running a business. There's a lot of things that are a pain, but remote supports is like a continual topic. He's always talking about, he's always pushing it. So I guess for you, Tony,
Mhm.
what are the benefits to Friends for Life directly that have like helped you overall and that you would suggest as to why you'd want to go with like THS and other people, even around here and people listening to the podcast, I'm assuming probably are more localized and businesses
Oh,
around
yeah.
here. How is this helping you?
Dude, it frees up a lot of my administrative staff time. My administrative staff have to constantly make sure that things are in the house are at an acceptable level, as well as the paperwork for state audits, which we are currently going through now. Let you guys know when that's all done. But my staff are not burnt out from having to constantly fill shifts for somebody who doesn't necessarily need a person there. It's helped with profits. Everyone within the company who works with the individual with remote supports were able to get raises. Every single house. There's not a house that did not. But again, to what David was saying, it hits me here for the growth and independence factor. If anything, if I'm talking about remote support so much, that's why. It's because I was told in my very first, day on the job, 18, 19 years old in this field, that you are doing more work, the less work that you're doing for an individual. And it kind of sounds like a double entendre, but it's basically saying if you show an individual to do or teach that individual how to do what you are doing for them, your job just got ultimately easier. And now that person has a sense of independence that they can continue. And guess what? This is the sweetest part about it. You might even be able to have that person teach somebody else. because even in some of the places we have remote supports, we're getting news individuals to come there who are not familiar with remote supports. And I have individuals saying, "Oh yeah, it's cool. Like I got my iPad here, I'll touch it and and
Can I
just
piggyback off that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Dave and I were at the Kalahari Resort for the conference last year. It was the fall conference, I believe it was. And we got our table, our booth up, and that's a conference where individuals receiving services go to, lots of them. Well, Dave's talking to a young lady in a wheelchair, and she's asking questions. She's never heard of remote support. You know, we've got the technology there. She's touching it, playing with it. And we got a guy walking down behind her. And the lady is talking to one of our staff through a two-way talk device that she initiated that call on. And she goes, "Whoa, where are you? What's your name? You know, where are you from? How are you talking to me?" And the guy walking down said, "Oh, you don't know about remote supports? I use it. You should definitely get it."
Yeah.
You know, and then he starts going on and on about it. And he knew the staff. "Oh, hey, Olivia." Like, so they get to build a rapport. They love it. And that community you're talking about, being able to tell another individual who maybe never knew about this, could be that door to some more freedom, some more independence.
Right.
And that's just like seeing his face and explaining it to her. Dave's like, "Well, my job's done."
Yeah.
There you go. Thanks.
And, you know, because it's a lot of our individuals are in fear of doing this. And it's not even fear brought upon by them. A lot of times it's the SSA or the team or the parent or guardian, you know, that they have all of these past issues, which I'm not going to say that anybody ignores, but we can't live by them. You know, we can't stay stuck in that same mind state. Yeah. If a person shoplift at 22 years old, 15 years prior, what reason is there for us to still have a protocol that, well, if he goes into the store, he has to be in arm's reach? Like, come on, let's try something new, you know?
That's just an industry thing, right? Like everybody's just they're like, the mindset is that person needs staff.
Yeah.
Well,
Why?
Yeah.
Aren't we supposed to make them more independent and try to help them get to that point?
That's what we used to think, but hell, who knows anymore? Well, for THS, what do you guys have planned on for the next coming? I mean, 2022 is still pretty new. Do you guys have anything planned to take the company to the next level? Are you looking into maybe even other states?
Well, we've hired more people to go do those consultations, to train, educate, and present. So now we have 5 of us here in Ohio that are spread out, and we can get to more people. Last time I talked to you, I forget exactly when that was, but we've officially started serving people in Indiana and in Oklahoma. Nice. We've got a guy in Vermont that's going to be starting. There's lots of other states,
Minnesota, Wisconsin,
doing this. Minnesota, we've got people. We've got maybe close to 40 people in Minnesota now.
And that's from word of mouth.
Yeah.
It's not, we haven't quite expanded to introduce ourselves yet, but providers that we work with see the benefits. We're good at what we do.
Yes.
And they're like, "Hey, we have some people over here. This state is starting this program too. Can we bring you here?"
And I've always had polite staffing on your end. I want to give you guys credit for that.
Oh, good.
Know that you're hiring good people who know how to speak well, speak fluently, get the information out, and you know, you can hear the smile in their voice. I think that's a big thing.
We train them to do that.
Yeah, thank God. Because I mean, it's a big deal. I don't think enough people train people to have the smile in their voice. And you kind of know when somebody doesn't.
We call it the smile and dial.
Yeah, right.
A big question I always get, and I want you to, talk about this. When you want to set up a new location, how much work do you have to put into that?
It's a text or an email. That's pretty much it to
That's
you.
it, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people think they have to do all this back end work. How am I going to get the equipment in? Who do I got to do? So what do you do? When you need a setup,
I just give a call. Hey, Dave, I got somebody. And all you say, who's the SSA? And that's it.
and then I set up the meeting. I go through everything. I get the
And you've
protocols.
even done it with tough people to get in contact with. Like I've seen hey, I see you didn't see my last email. I'm resending it. Can you get back? So the
Hey,
consistency.
I work for you.
My guy.
You ask me, I got to get it set up. So I will do all that legwork. So our job is to make everything easy for you guys as well,
So
which is what we try to do.
As a company, myself, any agencies, hop on this opportunity. Like do it while you can, because they're going to get too big at one point. They're going to look at us and be like, look at these guys.
Sorry, we had some technical difficulties there. I had to get fixed, but I wanted to ask a question before I forget. Could you explain to people that have this mentality that you guys are like Big Brother? What are some of the fail safes you have that like would ease people's mind to assure that you're not just quote unquote spying on them all the time? I mean, what kind of like stuff do you have in place? Like, is it like a one way they have to reach out to you in order for you to turn this stuff on? Or
so the first thing we built into our software is the schedule piece.
Mm-hmm.
So the notifications that our staff would receive that says, hey, Jimmy needs help, are blocked unless that schedule is in there. So when a supervisor or a manager has entered a schedule and it says 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., that's when notifications are going to be flowing through. So 2 p.m. in the day, no schedule, I won't know that door's open. I won't get an alert. I won't get a notification. When that notification comes in, it gets assigned to one of our staff and it says, hey, Jimmy's front door open. It tells them what to do. You know, maybe that's when it says, look at the front door camera. And it's going to ask a question. Did Jimmy leave? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, Jimmy's fine outside for a couple hours, set a timer. Or, hey, Jimmy might get lost. Try and reach him on his cell phone. You know, it guides them through those steps. And if I didn't leave and they said no, then it's who came in, call in, talk to them. Hey, I see you've got a guest. Can I get their name? You know, the password, whatever types of things you want us to put there. But that case is what our software calls it, assignment to the staff, is when our staff are able to get that protocol. And then it'll display on their screen, here's their two-way talk device, here's their camera. That's when they can look. Before that notification gets into them, they don't have anything right here where they can just click and look at Jimmy's camera. You know, that screen comes once an alert is assigned to them. So they handle that. It forces our staff to document too, every single case. So I have to document, Jimmy opened the door because he heard a noise. He closed it back. He didn't leave. Or Jimmy left, talked to him on his cell phone. He returned. Whatever that is, they force that documentation. And we, as an open book, have a provider portal that you, as an HPC company, have access to. And you'll see every single alert that came in, every single, what we call a case resolution. That's our documentation. You can see all that. You'd have access to look at who we mutually serve and what schedules we have in the system. And we're very transparent in that, you know, like this is a team partnership effort. You see what we see type of a thing when it comes to all the reports and documentation.
Yeah, so cameras are for visual verification on our part. We're not, when we're on, like Jimmy said, we work that schedule. We don't just turn on the camera and just check things out for 8 hours.
There'd be too many cameras anyways.
We do not miss things.
That. Like, it's got to tell us when to look.
Yeah, we only check the cameras for visual verifications when you tell us to check on something. So if you said when that door opens, check the camera, see what happens. That's the only time we check the camera and we saw what happened. Or do med checks. Let's get the visual verification. We do not stare at cameras, just to get the record straight. We're not
you're the
doing
only
that.
one doing that.
Yeah,
I tell you.
really.
And a lot of times a misconception is people expect a camera in the house. So they always bring it up. Like, I don't know if I like camera. You don't have to have a camera. All right, these are not cookie cutter setups. We don't say, hey,
we have hundreds
you
of
have to
people
put cameras in your house and we're going to look in your kitchen and find out what you're watching on Netflix. We are not doing that.
Hundreds of people without cameras.
Yeah.
And they receive remote support, so no cameras.
Yeah, like from the door sensors, window sensors, little things like that. I've what's the one thing I thought was the seizure pad. I
Mhm.
thought that was really neat to be able to have information like that. So with that, like, where do you find the equipment? Do you guys go to like special places to get deals for this?
Dave wants to go to Vegas to like the electronic expos and all this
They
stuff.
have new stuff. I feel like that's a legit
Totally.
business expense.
You know what? There's some more to DDs down there. I think I'll join you guys.
But it honestly, because we're involved with technology and wholesalers, and a lot of times, some of these wholesalers and different places have reps that they assign to us, and they're like, "Hey, have you heard of this new thing?" And we'll hear about it that way. Some other times, we're always looking at, okay, we've got a great solution for X, Y, and Z, but we've never really found something for this over here, and we're going to continuously be checking. So fall detection is one, and what we had used previously, which we still use in a lot of places, is a wearable device.
Mhm.
But wearables have that pitfall of the person's got to wear it.
Weird, yeah.
So if they're not compliant with wearing it, they don't want to wear it, those sorts of things, it's not going to work.
Mhm.
So we've been testing, and we've got it in 3 or 4 homes now, fall detection systems that get installed in like a ceiling or a wall, and you don't have to wear. And
Nice.
it uses radar technology and says, okay, this is where a person's walking, this is where their head's at. Well, all of a sudden, their head's low on the ground. Okay, they might have fallen.
Yeah.
Are they laying down or did they fall down? And then it's going to say, okay, they've been down there for 15 seconds or 20 seconds. I forget the exact number, but once it reaches that, then it's going to be telling us like, hey, this person needs checked on because X, Y, and Z, they're in this bedroom, wherever. And it can even learn this is a couch, this is a bed. No cameras. It doesn't see actual images.
Wow.
It looks at height and movement. So this is where your head's moving. All of a sudden you're down.
That's pretty neat.
That kind of a thing. So it's all about, we put it in our offices every now and then. We
We'll lay
see
down on the
random
ground.
people on the ground like, okay. Like,
Just testing.
Yeah, we did walk in one time. We saw one of our CEOs just laying on the ground. We're like, "Are you okay?" It's like, "Oh, just testing this new sensor over here." We're like, "Okay, cool."
Very
Carry on.
futuristic.
he'd do his rounds every day, like one in each different room, and
Just take a nap.
make sure that the alert came in and all that sort of stuff. And it's about, like we said, testing it. And we've learned, okay, it's not good across from mirrors. It's not, it's better in the ceiling than it is the wall. Because if you've got a piece of furniture that kind of blocks vision of the floor over there, it's all about learning those loopholes or pitfalls. And that way, when we talk about it in these consultations, we can explain all of that. And then the team has an educated stance on it, and they can decide which way they want to go.
Well, as like the companies who are receiving your services, is there any other ways that the data that you guys collect from like these hours and hours and hours of being in a house, if they wanted it, is there data that could say like, oh, it's if this person gets, say every second Monday, this person falls over, or maybe they're having a seizure or something. Is there any way they can use that data over time as well? Maybe, I don't know if there's any stuff like that you guys have done.
It depends on the piece, but on some of it, especially with like seizure detection, Tony brought up, when you can run very specific reports of how frequent are the seizures, when did they happen, how long did they happen for, 2.5 minutes, those sorts of things, then you can really start to pinpoint trends and patterns.
Mhm.
We've got some things where it's going to the bathroom at night. Okay, well, this person's average going to the bathroom at night is twice a week. Well, why are they going 20 times a week now all of a sudden? Kind of thing. So it's pretty cool when you can see that type of a trend or pattern, and you can kind of get an alert. That's not something actually that's readily available on the HPC side of the portal.
Right.
it's more in depth on our side of stuff. And we can set up all sorts of stuff. Now, obviously, I'm not going to know how many times someone goes to the bathroom unless you're worried about that. Because if you tell me that that's a concern or something, we can put a motion detector in there. Obviously, we're going to keep someone's privacy in the bathroom. We're not going to see anything. So we're just detecting motion. And that could be get out of bed. We detect you're out of bed, and then we detect you're in the bathroom. And that's how we know the timeline of things without having that camera in someone's area where they want privacy. So it's about using those data points in what we call like an activity timeline to really understand the flow of what's happening when you can't see it.
That makes a lot of sense.
I got a couple more questions, more for so our listeners know if they want to contact you. But do you have to have a waiver to receive these services, or do you do any self-pay services like this?
We do private pay. We do self-pay.
Okay.
So they can contact us anytime. Our website's thsrss.com. Our phone number is 513-882-9088. My name's Jimmy. This is Dave. Feel free to reach out to us when you call. Like, you can get through the prompts and get to one of us. But we take private pay situations for sure. We've got some people that are older, and so people have hired us to kind of watch over their parents. And we have some younger adults too, who their waiver might not give as much funding as they might need or want from the family. So the family pays beyond what the waiver does.
Gotcha.
Kind of setup. So we've got both of those.
Well, that's good to know.
Oh, I thought you said you had more questions.
Oh, well, no, he actually answered like both
All
parts
of them
of it.
into one.
Yeah,
I knew it. I was like reading your mind.
I'm very impressed that you remember the number. Like, I don't even know your number. You know the company number by heart.
I would say your phone number on this. I know it, but everybody would call you.
Say it.
We'll put it in the YouTube notes too, so everyone will call you. Just get the most random calls.
There you go.
It's exactly what you want. Tony, I think this is a good time to play a little game.
Yeah, the one called Rapid Fire. Now, if you guys are not familiar, Rapid Fire is a part of the show where I ask you 3 questions in a would you rather scenario. We want these answers to be as quick as possible, but hey, who knows what happens here? You guys ready?
Dave's ready.
I guess we have to be ready, don't we?
Yeah, you signed the waiver when you know.
Yeah, that pint of blood that I took, that was... All right, first one. Would you rather talk like Yoda or breathe like Darth Vader?
Breathe.
Ooh, no, Yoda for sure.
Darth Vader is awesome.
He's so cool.
I knew you were going to pick Yoda because you said you were a nerd earlier, and I want to talk like Darth.
I'll tell you that
like Yoda.
Dave really is the Star Wars nerd.
Yeah.
I like Star Wars.
Your best
Star
Darth
Wars,
Vader
you know.
impression.
Do what?
I want to hear that Darth Vader impression.
I mean, it's just very hard breathing. It's not a good impression.
That was a terrible impression.
Yeah, terrible. Horrible.
You spoke the impression. That's not.
All right. Would you rather get caught eating a booger or scratching your privates?
Scratching. That's happened before, so
Probably.
it's already happened.
Probably
It's
scratching.
done.
Yeah.
It's just day
All right.
stuff.
Would you rather feel like you're about to sneeze for an entire day or feel like you were about to fart the entire day?
That's actually kind of tough. Sneezing is annoying, but like feeling
Are
like
you
you
in
have to.
public?
Hey, yep,
Just a
you
normal
have to
day.
come
You're in
on the
public,
podcast.
I'm going to say sneezing. Though in today's day and age, that's probably like worse and scary.
But it'll make you look, it'll give you this face.
Oh yeah, I know your eyes are squinting. You're like watering out of your eye. I don't know if I can handle that all day.
That might be one of the worst questions you've asked to imagine.
Did you research that question for me?
I sit and I keep a couple books that have some interesting things, and I listen to what people talk about, and I try to grab a little
He's
something
like,
here and
I'll
there.
use that later.
What book were you reading that had that in there?
Oh, you'll see.
He's got a bunch of really weird dad joke books.
The Poop Troop book.
Good to know.
Yeah, because man, I love dad jokes, and I come up with them all the time. but it gets very tiring trying to come up with scenarios all the time. So I use them kind of like, brain juice power.
Some people read like classic literature. Some people read like self-help books.
Been there, done that.
Tony's got
the
dad joke.
Dad joke books.
Dad joke book.
He's got to fill his brain with useful stuff.
See, he uses remote support. He has a lot more time on his
Exactly.
hands to read dad joke books.
So with that being said, is there any kind of other things that maybe we didn't touch on that you'd like people to know about remote supports? Or, if not, maybe just some sentiments that you'd like the world to know about yourself, THS?
I mean, the biggest thing is the misconception is there's so much work on somebody's end to set up remote supports or get it set up. And I guess providers need to know that they need to be certified to be paid backup. That's the number one reason people don't get benefits of remote supports. Because once you're certified to be paid backup for remote supports, and you have to go to your DoD portal and get that. A lot of people just forgot to check the mark when they got their certifications. Once you do that, it puts so much more power in your hands because then you can just call me, like you said, I got a guy. And then we are your consultant. We do everything for you. Once you have a site set up, we contact the SSA. We get all the equipment list together. We do all that stuff. So I think that's the biggest thing is there's not a lot of work on your hand. You just got to get the certification. Once you get the certification, you now control remote supports and where it can go and what we do because we work for you. That's the biggest thing. We work for you. That's how the billing is set up. You bill for remote supports hours. You do all of that stuff.
And a real quick disclaimer. This does not stop you as an agency provider for being responsible. Because if they do call, now granted, it is a very low chance. But if they do, you are responsible to go help. Don't say that you are out reading dad joke books. You have to make sure that you have somebody there responsible to show up for that individual. But like Jimmy and Dave both said, that's if you've done your job correctly, that'll happen very few in between.
And to piggyback off that, because you are responsible, and the state rule says that we're supposed to identify a timeline of when that person would be there. Most of the situations that we have say something like 45 minutes to 60 minutes on average of a response time. So it's not like your HPC staff have to be there within 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, like it can be a reasonable amount of time of whatever you think you could fulfill. And on average, so one time someone might be there in 20 minutes. Another time might be 70 minutes. It just depends. And like you said, it's not often, but when there is a call of, hey, Jimmy got sick, he's up throwing up, he does need someone to come in and help him. That would be a time when a staff person would have to come in.
And we're staff. I mean, we're supposed to take care of everything. That's why we don't want to call you.
Yeah.
But if we do, and you did have someone come out, you now bill full HPC rate from the time we call you to the time you get home afterwards. So you still bill for those full rates when we do have to call you out there.
Which is good.
So you do have that reasonable time to get there. You're not supposed to be there in 5 minutes. If it's 3 a.m, like I'm assuming you're half asleep. So you have time to get there, but you can bill for that full time that you're there to help that individual if they're up throwing up.
Gotcha.
Sounds like your entire job as a remote support team is to make people like Tony's life easier, especially during these weird times. So on that note, I want to thank you guys for driving all the way down here and hanging out with us. And
absolutely, we appreciate you guys inviting us up. I like this setup.
Thank you.